welcome to the Slow-Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Mike.
And I'm Alex.
And on today's episode, we are going to recap Goose's amazing week from 2 shows at the Palace in Louisville to nights at Ameris Amphitheater in Alpharetta and PNC Pavilion in Charlotte. But first, as always, best way to keep up with us and everything going on with Goose is on our socials at Slow-Ready Pod. We're just about everywhere you can imagine on the internet. And you can also email us, slowreadypod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Anything from topics you'd like us to get into or show reviews or any comments, please reach out. And we're going to get into our main topic here in just a moment. But first, want to get into the news and notes, as always, from Goose this week in our first segment, Hot Tea. And just a few minor notes to get into here. I mean, I don't want to say minor, but nothing earth-shattering, but very cool news. We've got Cotter Ellis and Friends announced 3 shows in early October. They're going to be playing Tank Studio on 10/9, Foam Brewers on 10/10, Stowe Cider on 10/11. A lot of these shows have the same artist at all of them. Some of them have some different ones featuring, but a lot of great people like Rob Compa from Neighbor and Dopapod and Justin Mazer from Graham Lesh, Brian Murray from Dogs in a Pile, just to name a few. But there's a lot of great musicians on every one of these lineups. Any thoughts on these shows, Alex? Any ones that you're planning on attending?
Oh man, I wish. They look absolutely fantastic. But I have some friends in town that weekend coming to visit from Virginia to come hang in Philly. So I can't make it. And I wish I lived like a few hours further north so I could be closer to some of these Cotter gigs because they all look absolutely outstanding. So anyone within a few hour radius, like definitely try to be there. It looks like a great time.
Yeah, and as we saw in the vlogs here recently, apparently everyone up there knows Cotter Ellis, according to Sam King anyways.
He's the mayor.
The mayor, absolutely. Those new vlogs were absolutely excellent. If anyone gets a chance, please watch these new shows because these vlogs were outstanding.
Some of my favorites for sure of the year. That should be in the news segment.
Yeah, you texted me about it, and that prompted me to go back through and watch the streams where I was just at, and they are excellent. So, yeah, shout out to you for that. Goose also went on Barstool's Pardon My Take recently for an interview. It's not a super long thing, but they get into some interesting topics. There's some interesting questions there as well. Did you get a chance to check that out, Alex?
I did. It was great. They honestly went into more kind of cool detail than I thought they would for Pardon My Take, and it being like their first time meeting Big Cat and all that. So he was totally geeking out. I don't know if PFT was geeking out, but he seemed into it too, and it was a pretty cool vibe there. I'm not necessarily crazy thinking about Barstool Bros being at a lot of concerts or anything like that, but it was a cool platform for the Goose guys, and they actually asked some pretty deep questions, so big fan.
Yeah, and that's a caveat that I would issue as well, because I'm definitely aligned with you as far as Barstool goes. But I mean, what it led to was a really interesting discussion, and at the end of the day, it was just really cool answers from our boys. So always cool to see Goose give their takes on like a wide range of topics. So I'm glad whenever someone asks them like actually different questions.
Yeah, it was fun.
And then a couple other things here. Goose recently performed for Spectrum on Sirius XM Radio. They were covering I Would Die For You by Prince and performing the new original single Royal. So kind of a short set there, but something cool happening in the Goose world, as well as just announced, actually, as of today's recording, they're doing a drop with Humbles, doing a highlighter collection that you can pre-order all week. Today it's probably too late because I think they were doing, what was it, live printing from 1 to 4, Alex?
They were doing live printing from 1 to 4, but the drop actually lasts till the 5th of October. So hopefully this will be out well before that. I think you'll have a few days to at least pre-order one and have it shipped to you. And you won't get to watch it made live necessarily, but it's still a cool shirt.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Sorry, not just a shirt. It's hoodie, shorts, shirt, hat, all of it.
Yeah, it's all kind of the same theme, but yeah, a couple different options there. And I did want to just shout it out, even though by the time this drops, it'll be too late for anyone to do the live creation. I just thought it was a really cool part of the package that if you did jump on it right away today, you could watch what you're purchasing being created in real time. That was just a unique part of the deal. And Goose is always involved in the most creative shit, it feels like.
I know. It is a cool collab, and I had to treat myself to one after I saw the New York Giants score a touchdown at home for like the first time in 27 years. with our new quarterback. So I was like, let's get a shirt.
That's a hell of a way to commemorate it, and I definitely support that fully.
Nothing like retail therapy.
We could all use it. And so kind of a light week on news and notes. So we have a lot to cover here, Alex. Were at 2 shows. I was at 2 shows. All 4 of them were excellent. It was a big week for Goose. So let's jump into the flow down here for our main topic, which we're going to start off with the first show of the week and the first one that you were at, which was going to be night 1 in the Louisville Palace Theater on September 23rd. So do you want to take us through that set list?
Yeah, but first, of course, I want to say that this is the news. So saying it's light on news, like these shows are the news. I'm just giving you a little shit, buddy. But also, we just recorded like 3 days ago. So like that much happening that we either forgot about since then or since then is crazy that Goose always has something going on. But anyway, into the flow down we go. Night 1 in Louisville, September 23rd, opens with My Mind Has Been Consumed by Media, Into All I Need, into Inside Out, into Born, into A Fifth of Beethoven, then A Hot Love and the Lazy Poet, Spirit of the Dark Horse, into Dustin Hoffman to close set 1. And then set 2 open with The Pancakes, into Everything Must Go, then a mid-set White Lights, into Bob Dawn, and Sinnerman to close out set 2 with a Slow Ready into Salt Encore. Incredible.
I mean, where do you want to start? I kind of feel like this is going to be a rerun of what we just did 3 days ago, where you're just like, we're going to have to take this line by line, song by song, because it's kind of what the shows deserve and what they require. So you want to just start off maybe here with the first 2? Like we've got The Great My Mind, which is just involving And All I Need. Hell of a 1-2 punch to get your trip to Louisville started.
I'm really digging My Mind Has Been Consumed by Media more and more the more I catch it and listen to it on these streams. It's just so fun. I love the Talking Head vibe, and it's just got this awesome like synth work by Peter that you don't hear anywhere else in this catalog, at least live. And it's got its own unique, distinct sound and plenty of energy. So I'm a big fan of it opening. But then we hit the jams early here with All I Need, right? And I love to see an early jam in this 2 slot like this. In my opinion, on this jam, Peter really dictated the terms of it pretty early on after a pretty low-key entry point. He kind of started hitting these accented shots on the keys that Cotter picked up on, and then that led to some really cool back and forth with Rick and those 2 guys based off of where they were choosing to accent their riffs. I thought the next part of the jam was even cooler, where all 4 guys were kind of shining all at once after that back and forth, and it was just like a full-on conversation going and coming in and out of this circling jam all at the perfect times, like mind meld to the max. And the band eventually kind of decided to move on and latched onto this driving, repeating 3-shot riff that was bordering on head banging territory. Like it wasn't quite like metal territory, but it was just really kind of hard rock almost. And yeah, it was a great ride up to that. They decided to linger there for a little bit before changing gears into a slowed down transition into Inside Out. But this is about 15 to 16 minutes long, I want to say. I don't have the run times in front of me because I always forget to pull them up before the show. But yeah, it was terrific. And you're not seeing a lot of these shows these days that have an early jam like this. Usually it's kind of 3-4 shorter songs, and then they kind of ease into the jams. But this was nice to see bright and early.
Yeah, definitely. And that makes me think of, we've been talking so much about their set list creativity lately, but they've also shown, maybe not as much as the song selection, but definitely in small bursts here, some room for playing around with when they choose to go off on these journeys. So hoping that they stay flexible with all of it, because it's really nice to see. I agree with you. My Mind is quickly becoming one of my favorite openers. It really just sets the right tone for a concert. It's just so much fun, and it's outlandish, and I like starting off a show with a lot of energy like that. But this All I Need, you're right, that it almost feels like anytime they start off with that atmospheric space, they're going to find something good to sink their teeth into. And that progression that Peter picks out on piano pretty early on just kind of serves as a really nice platform, like you said, to, Rick and Trevor getting some tight little runs in and out. Their chemistry is always insane to me, but then also a lot of communication, like you said, between like all of them. And specifically, I noticed Rick and Cotter, just as far as when the tempo was increasing, there was a lot of communication between the 2 of them as far as getting this thing up to its peak before, as you also mentioned, just the gorgeous transition to Inside Out. It's got to be in the running for one of the transitions of the year here. So, I mean, what a hell of a start for a show, man. And this is night one.
I know it's absolutely wild to think about that this is just the first two songs we're talking about, and it's already a huge highlight. And then another huge highlight right after that, this Inside Out, already a pretty coveted cover, but oh my goodness, another really, really great jam in a totally different way. Much more chill and patient, if you will. Rick had this gritty tone going on during this early and often, and was rocking it between Peter's subtle work on the keys and even a little bit of light synth work, it sounded like, building up the jam layer by layer. A lot, once again, another full band, slow crescendo, layer by layer jam. But this one stayed in the chill zone for a much longer time than kind of trying to ratchet up towards a peak and kind of stay at a sustained peak, if that makes any sense. Rick goes more and more in, and Trevor is absolutely cooking with some really slick bass lines at one point to take the groove through the roof. And I think that when it comes to the word patient, we've talked about that a lot. I think this one is a new way to frame that patient compared to like the Goosemas Hunger Sites and others we've talked about of the world, where it stays chill, but it's still patient and builds.
A million percent. This was my set one highlight. So I mean, like you said, everyone wants to get this song live, but to get a version like this, I mean, it's just really special. I really thought, again, this was really driven a lot by Peter pushing things at first gently on keys. And I love how Rick's kind of just accentuating that progression with, fills here and there. And yeah, I mean, this is the new definition for patient as far as I'm concerned. It just gradually rises to the moment. And Peter and Rick are in such lockstep with each other, enhancing each other's progressive playing. And when they get to the meltdown at the end, Trevor's descending lines, he's just working so well with the fury of Cotter's playing that, I mean, I don't know how to say it other than just full blown, full band chemistry. It's blooming here.
Yeah, mind meld. It's absolutely
Yeah.
bonkers. Especially this early in a set one, right? Where sometimes it takes a minute for the brew to develop, and it just was there right from the jump on night one.
Yeah, no misses in the first three songs. I mean, your teeth are just fully into this. So, kind of a little bit downshifting, though, because now we go into a Born, which I want to also call out. Rick either fumbled or this was either accidental or he was teasing it intentionally, but there were definitely some Born influences going into Inside Out. But then now they actually play it to cool things down a little bit because that peak in Inside Out is just really insane. And you get a really huge shock with the Fifth of Beethoven. So, what are your thoughts on this one too, coming out of that?
Born and Inside Out definitely sound really similar going in, and I think there's definitely some nods to Born going into that Inside Out because half the room was thinking it was Born. But this was a nice short Born, like we've seen a lot this year, that served as a transition point into something really cool, and that being a Fifth of Beethoven. And if we're not going to get a cool Born jam, the outro kind of gave that away a little bit because it's a little more funky than we get coming out of Born to go into the jam. And it was a Fifth of Beethoven. And I looked over at my buddy who was there for his first show after geeking out about Goose for a long time now. He finally got out to a show locally. And I was like, you realize you've seen like two of the coolest covers in like the first 5 songs or whatever, right? Like it was just absurd. They're them busting out 2 covers like that people chase in a lot of cases or just really want to hear. And yeah, it was a fun dance party. Absolutely love a Fifth of Beethoven. You can use that as a jam anytime you want, Goose.
100%. Would love to see them mix that up with other jams in the future. I think it's also interesting. Something you said made me think of this, but with the Born, you almost can't jam it out in this situation because the intro or off ramp from it is way too similar to where Inside Out is going to start. So it's like one or the other kind of has to go long there. But a Fifth of Beethoven, even from the couch at home, was just like, what the fuck is actually happening in Louisville? That's like the thrill of a lifetime to see even at home. So I can't imagine being there. And to then like go into Hot Love right off of that, I just felt like, well, this is really ambitious, Goose, to go for this long of an energy peak. But it really all worked flawlessly. And the jamming in Fifth of Beethoven was so insane that there was, in my mind, no way they could go into something high energy, but they did it flawlessly and the room seemed to go with it. It didn't seem like it was an issue.
That was the first real sing-along of the night, and you could tell the crowd was ready to jump on it. At least in our section. We were sitting right next to Getty and the soundboard. So we got some really good perspective on the room in front of us, but not the balcony above us. And it just looked like everyone was ready to pounce on the floor, at least on a sing along, and the crowd was going nuts for Hot Love. So it was fun.
Absolutely. And then another shocker, or at least it would be in any other show, but I guess when you start off a show the way this one starts off, maybe not so much. This is kind of tame by comparison, but Spirit of the Dark Horse just showing up. I think that's always a treat. I think it's one of their most well-constructed songs in the catalog. I know it sometimes gets shit from people from being a little bit static, but I mean, this show is just filled with like just gem after gem, especially if you're somebody that's been chasing some things. To your point about your friend going to this first show, how the hell do you come out of that with all of this in one set? Like,
yeah, and no kidding. And like, of course, the wish list for a first show is like Arcadia and Hunger Site.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to hear the big hitters, and like, not getting those in Louisville this year, but you're getting all the deep cuts early, man. I thought this was really, really good. The Spirit of the Dark Horse. It had a nice opening jam to it that I don't really recall hearing. It was super atmospheric. Kind of felt like walking through like a hazy fog, and then the image slowly clearing up to find that you're going to get Spirit of the Dark Horse. And this is a song that you've mentioned gets a lot of shit from people at times. Sometimes it's because it's static. Sometimes it's because it doesn't sound as full or fleshed out to some people as some other songs. Like there's a lot of effects going on. It doesn't always sound fleshed out to some folks, from at least the online comments I've read. And I thought this version sounded super clean and super full. And I think they've locked into a pretty good sound for it. The only complaint I really have is one that's happened on every version but one. And I just want to hear that thunder outro with the ooze at the end. I think it's time to try that again. It's been 4 years. I know it's tough to pull off, but let's get on it, because that would be so sick.
I mean, 100%. Me and my girlfriend were listening to that earlier because I was trying to like go through and like reimagine like if I actually still think like they could, pull this off live, because it's obviously just been the one time. But I think they should try, especially I think, now that you've got a drummer that can do vocals pretty well, I think, and
Yeah.
you've got a lot more vocal chemistry between Peter and Rick. It may not be like quite as much of the choir type sound that you get on the album version, where it sounds like they're using at least like a few duplicates of Rick's voice to create that effect. Maybe that's not, totally possible live, but I do think they should go for it, because I think it would come out pretty good at this point with what they've got.
I think it's worth a shot. I mean, I'm grateful they play a good chunk of that Thunder jam outside of that little last minute and a half or two, because it's just fantastic. And especially when it's being a rarity like that, I don't really know how people can whine too much about it being the same always, because they play it like once every 20, 30 shows, if that.
100%. Yeah. And Thunder's beautiful. So, I mean, it should get played at some point again. And I feel like with this 4-piece, they've got the tools to do it. So hopefully we'll see that in the future. They're experimenting a lot right now. That's for sure.
No kidding. They brought back the Sanskrit after a long hiatus in Indian River. They brought back the second outro for Drive.
Yep.
The former outro from years ago, and now it's back, and we'll see what they bring back. Please be Thunder.
And somehow, though, we're still not done with set one, because after the Spirit of the Dark Horse, you also get Dustin Hoffman, which I think works incredibly well as a set closer. Just a great bit of energy. And I think it's already, maybe you can speak to this, having been there, becoming a little bit more of a sing-along as people are becoming more familiar with it and the album's been out for longer.
Definitely a crowd pleaser already. It's a huge fan favorite. And yeah, great set closer. Even if this one's like quote unquote type 1 standard fare, didn't explore that much, it's just awesome. An awesome way to close a set and ride that high into set break. So always welcome a Dustin Hoffman in a set, and I appreciated the little bit of improv we did get.
Yeah, it was very efficient to get to that powerful punch at the end. So there's something to be said for that style of jamming too.
100%.
But set 2, Pancakes, finally. Tell me about it.
It's like my 20th show, and I hadn't seen Pancakes till that night. So finally got a Pancakes. I don't know how I managed to dodge it for that long. And it was a fun one. I really enjoyed it. It's a great set opener. That's why they play it in this spot all the time. And I thought that the early jam got interesting in a different way early, with Cotter ratcheting up the energy with the typical Cotter shuffle, just right off the jump. And Rick locked into this muddy tone once again, kind of channeling that Inside Out vibe a little bit, but more energy this time. And Peter latched on to the marimba pretty early to signal a shift from that kind of Cotter shuffle, normal pancakes entry point into the next section of the jam. It's a little bit hard for me to describe. I had a bunch of different random adjectives thrown on my page as I was writing notes to describe what Rick was doing super well. But it was almost these repeated, speedy, yet hypnotizing, synced up runs with Getty's lights to make you feel like you were swimming in the jam while you were in the venue. I don't know how well that came across on the stream, but it's like the lights were moving at the same pace as Rick's like blistering runs there. And speaking of synced up, also Trevor was locked in with everything, playing super melodically in the background in a way that really complemented what Rick was doing. And then after lingering in that space for a while because it was so fun, the jam took a tone shift while Rick was playing in a fairly similar style, but it had more of an upbeat spin to it to kind of sort of the finish line. And I just thought it was a great way to open the second set in a different feel to a Pancakes jam that was well appreciated.
Yeah, this was, I think, my biggest highlight from this show, honestly, which might be kind of weird to say, but I thought it was very different. Like, to your point, it was a funky start, which is, not that untypical, but there was this really interesting little snappy, groovy progression from Peter early on, and it was another patient approach. And I loved what you said about the swimming, because what I wrote about it was Rick loving these circular swirling lines, because that's how it felt to me too. They kept picking up in intensity though, so they felt like they were swirling, but they felt like they kept increasing and getting faster and faster, almost like I was on like a runaway merry-go-round or something. But and then
Absolutely.
Cotter keeps increasing the intensity and frequency of his rolls, adding to this like circular feel to the jam that I felt like him and Rick were both like intentionally embracing. And maybe that was intentional with the lighting as well, but it just builds in this explosive finish. And I thought it was very efficient building, because I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's like 18 minutes and 12 seconds for this one. So, not the longest by any stretch, but what they accomplished in that time, I feel like deserves a lot of praise.
Yeah, it was hard to describe because, to your point, it's like these circular runs that feel like they're getting faster, but it also doesn't feel fast. It's like literally fast slow, not like the
Yeah.
song, but like literally fast and slow at the same time. It felt like, and it almost felt like an organism, like just going with the flow, but it was just ratcheting up in intensity at the same time. Just super cool listen if you haven't heard it. Well worth a listen. Just totally different from anything else I've heard on a Pancakes lately.
Yeah, either way, I was getting dizzy. So I'll just say it that way. um, and then you got another big one here with this EMG, continuing its trend of leaning into the darkness. So how did you feel about this one?
A really solid version of EMG, kind of a return to form for what we've been looking for since the EMG album drop, not leaning so much into that album sound, but kind of back to the old sound a lot. And, it hit the same old high energy segue into the jam that we love that EMG does, but Trevor's cranked the hell up this time, and it's in the best way possible. And the jam eventually just dissipates from that point into a quieter zone, searching for the next big peak. Peter starts introducing these ominous key shots, and Rick starts playing this death march, dark tinged, crazy pattern to elevate the energy. And when things start hitting the boiling point, Cotter kicks things into double time to kind of Kool-Aid man through the figurative jam wall to hit this wailing peak that careened back into the outro of EMG. Like, just absurd. Really enjoyed myself at the show with this one. Maybe not the most exploratory EMG we've ever heard, but it was nice to see it back like this, and really loved the energy of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's very well said. I would just say, like, I guess that it's this one scales very nicely. It felt like one of the more cohesive dark jams of 2025, just in the sense that there was no time wasted. It seemed like from the jump, they kind of just knew where they wanted to go with it. We don't even need to figure anything out. It's not as long or robust as the standout February versions, but the changes were so clean and efficient, and the peak was transcendent. So, yeah, I just thought it was a compact, awesome jam.
Totally. It was fantastic. And that was kind of the theme of the night. I don't think anything went over 20 minutes on this night, but a lot of just great compact jamming. And it felt like a really great show flow overall with some great pockets of improv.
Yeah, and this one's going to be up there for me when it's all said and done as far as just set list of the year. If we're just looking at in terms of like choosing songs and the order and just how they chose to do this start to finish. This is just a lot of these things. They're unexpected, but they're also just you can't imagine them anywhere else.
I mean, spoiler alert. This, if you could like curate a run that I wanted to hear in September of 2025 at this moment, like it was hard to beat this Louisville run in terms of just like getting a ton of cool deep cuts and cool little jams and just being a fun 2 night stand. But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll get more into the set list.
Yeah, so a rare treat actually is next with White Lights. Short
Yep.
but sweet, but love to get your thoughts on that because it doesn't show up very often. And this is another song which kind of puzzles me, the hate that it gets online from people, because I think that it's always great whether they, drag it out a little bit or it's just short and sweet, but there's always some cool improv in it. And I think it's one of the better sounding songs in the catalog.
It's great. And I love it mid set like this because often you'll see it as just a solo encore song, and a nice surprise in the middle of set two. It was just an absolute kind of ripping jam early on that cooled down into a moody zone that made me wonder where it was going, and it was just a nice, cool transition into Bob Don. But a really fun version. White Lights is a great sing along too, and I think in terms of like their popular songs, it's a really great one for like anyone to listen to. I'm not sure where it gets the hate from.
Yeah, I think some people object to like some of the lyrics or they just don't really hit for them, but either way, I think it's an adorable song, and it's got a really catchy, bouncy vibe that works well as kind of a transitionary song between a bunch of the things that they have going on in set lists. And I wish, to your point, they would use it as a transitory song more often because it can build a bridge to a lot of different things depending on where you want to take the improv and how long you want the improv to be. But here they use it for another just chef's kiss transition to Bob Don. It was just so subtle how that started bubbling up in the background. And then it seems like Bob Don sneaks up on me maybe more than most songs do in the Goose catalog, but it's always welcome late in a set too. But the placement here is like pretty much impossible for me to critique in any way.
Yeah, I saw someone say it on Blue Sky. Sorry, I forgot who said it, but I was like, yes, that is the take. And it is that Bob Dylan was like the original Jed Stone, like song before the set closer, cool down banger. And it has not lost its shine there, in my opinion. Nice to see it not forgotten with Jed Stone also crushing that role. But yeah, this one got a proper width, absolutely ripping. The crowd all had their hands up, kind of throwing down on that end jam, and just absolutely love this song. It does sneak up on you in the best way, and it's just the best emotional ride.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most underrated songs in the catalog, and it's always welcome, but especially here late in the set too. Just you can't fault it. But Goose didn't want to go out with anything less than a humongous bang, so you get the Rapture Cinnamon, and I think everyone wants to hear from somebody that was there for the Rapture. How was the Cinnamon?
There's a lot of little nods to the Rapture. Inside Out had some nods to it. Cinderman had some nods to it. I think they were feeling that Rapture theme on the night, and yeah, Cinderman's been on a tear since Cotter joined. It's always kind of been a banger, but especially since Cotter joined, I feel like. And this Goonsier version of it was no exception. Just all out dance party at the Louisville Palace. Peter was rocking this sparkling synth tone in the background. Cotter's laying down a disco beat. Rick's just ripping, and Trevor's just holding it all down, head bobbing, getting the crowd going with that thick bass. And it was just a fun time. Not a lot of necessarily like crazy substance or anything to break down other than just epic Goons dance party, but I loved it. It's 18 minutes of joy.
Yeah, joy is the right way to describe it. I just had Vampire Dance Club vibes. That's what I'm just going to keep saying because that's the vibe it gives me.
Yeah.
And the only thing in particular, I really love the feel of Peter's progression was extremely bouncy, and I feel like he accentuated that here, which led to even more dance party vibes. That was the only thing I wanted to call out. He seemed to really make that a little bit more prominent, even over top of some of the sequencing. But it was just, yeah, like you said, 18 minutes of joy and fun. And then Slow Ready closes down in style, sans jam, but with a bonus of a salt appearance for maybe one of the more perfect encores one could construct.
Oh, it's absolutely terrific, especially when you have the context of how night 2 turned out. And I love when they do that kind of stuff. A multi-night stand with the no jam on the Slow Ready was a huge surprise, and the sudden jump into a ripping salt is always a great way to close out a set. Like, We talk a lot ad nauseum, probably to the point where people shut the podcast off when we start talking about Salt, because we say it goes anywhere in a set. But I think this is the peak spot for Salt, is in the encore, closing things down, getting everyone going. And this one got a little longer of a runtime than I thought, because they started up this Salt and it was 11:30. Like, it was curfew, and they went till like 11:43 or whatever it was. But yeah, this one had a really cool, creepy as hell stretch in it early. And you're basically only getting these discordant, dissonant chirps from Peter and Rick, while Cotter was kind of low-key holding on the tempo with some light toms work. And then, like a locomotive rolling out of the station, Rick started this chugging riff that just elevated the room to a quick dark peak and turned the knob up to 11 to hit the ripping Salt outro and just get the crowd just erupt. And felt like a long extended cheer on this one, like longer than I hear after a normal song, which was great to hear. But people love Salt.
They definitely do, especially when it's like this. And I agree. It's really good in the encore. I've seen them at SPAC last year do it where, it was so ready into Salt. So kind of interesting how they have flipped that a little bit, but it works really well as the back half, especially when you're not expecting it like that. And this one, like you said, it was really discordant, and they chose to do that pretty much right away with the jam, and it went for broke. And it was just a very efficient foray into some of the stuff we saw from Milwaukee or, Westville, Rockdale. It's just kind of in that vein. But what I thought was so impressive about it was just sort of like the everything must go. They just set their intention and their North Star so quickly early on that they were able to achieve a lot more, a lot quicker. And that's been working for them, just hitting these peaks faster because they just know where they want to go right away.
And if you don't think at some point during Salt, is this the best version of Salt ever, then you're not catching a good Salt, which has been literally every version so far.
You're doing it wrong, according to Alex. Every Salt.
No,
I'm
just like I feel like every time I hear one of the show, there's someone in my radius being like, "Is this the best version ever?" And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's that good of a song.
Terrific. So great night one. Exhausting because there was so much dancing going on and hype, but night two cometh.
Yeah, and then somehow you had to gear back up to do this all over again. So I guess I'll read off this one here. We just alternate. So sure. Night two, you start off with Jive 2. You've got Atlas Dogs, Earthling or Alien makes a return, Turn Clouds, How It Ends, Slow Ready, Just the Jam, because it was missing night 1. And then set 2, you've got Arrow, Rosewood Heart, Cover of Tomorrow Never Knows, Dripfield, and then State of the Art with Jim James himself, and an encore of Don't Do It, also with Jim James himself. So let's start at the beginning, Alex. Jive 2 and Atlas Dogs. Where are we at?
My hands are on my head, just reflecting back on the show that was almost a week ago. Jive 2, man. I looked over at my buddy Justin. Now it's show 2. I looked at him and was like, when Jive 2 starts a show, it's going to be an amazing night. Like, that's just a law of nature at this point. It's always a sign of great things to come. It's the best Jive, and it was absolutely terrific. I had been chasing this one, too, 20 shows. Those were like 2 most common not seen songs, were Jive 2 and Pancakes, and I finally caught them. So really happy early.
Amazing. Super happy for you there. Yeah, I totally agree. Jive 2 is an amazing opener choice. And, like to your point, it's going to be special because it's not something they do a lot. So Atlas Dogs as well, keeping the energy high. I think anytime a Goose show starts off with 2 really solid originals like that are not necessarily like classified as openers, quote unquote, I think it's going to be a special show for sure. But yeah. I don't have a ton of notes on those, but I do really want to talk about this Earthling or Alien reemerging in a huge way. Starts off with some slow, patient, funky jamming and really, really tremendous tone on Rick's guitar. Has that distorted, delayed envelope filter that he utilizes going. And I thought that jam peaked gloriously, but you were there. I was not. What was that one like in person?
So in the moment, in the room, I was thinking like, wow, this version sounds a lot like the version I really liked from Toronto in February. Like, it was really, really a lot like that. And then I felt a little bit better when I saw the guys from AAT and people online were saying the same thing. I was like, oh, good. I'm not an idiot who just thinks they all sound the same. But yeah, lo-fi, Trevor heavy groove with some really airy guitar work from Rick and some Ripley synth from Peter that kind of moves into this great floating, bubbly panorama of happiness. Just an absolute vibe and a treat. Just like the Toronto version, this is like the cool cousin. It's going to be hard to pick between those two as my favorite ERA of this year so far because it's just a vibe. And unlike anything you'll hear from any other jam, from any other song besides those two this year.
Definitely. Yeah, 100% agree. That's all very well said. And I ranked them very similarly on my playlist. So I don't know if it's going to take like a week of just going back and forth between the two over and over again until it makes sense to me. But
It's
both
gonna
just
be
like
like
stand out.
that blind taste test thing where they make us try Coke and Pepsi. It's like Toronto or Louisville.
Yeah.
Listen to a
Yeah.
minute clip and decide.
We might have to resort to that or drawing straws or something. I don't know. But anyways, they keep the energy going with Turn Clouds here. And it's a couple extra minutes longer, I feel like, than Turn Clouds normally is too.
What was the runtime on it? Let me pull it up real quick. Let
I
me be
think
a
it
good
was 13
podcast host.
minutes.
Yeah, 13:30. So pretty decent.
Yeah.
Definitely felt like there was some extra mustard on this one. It was just a fun time. You know, you got that like soulful bluesy style of jamming to it early on, and it was just a great time and another sing-along tune that people love.
Definitely. And then they cool it down with the gorgeous how it ends, kind of a mini cool down before bringing it back with the slow ready jam just to finish off what they started but didn't the previous night. So how did that go over in the crowd? I'm guessing pretty huge. I'm guessing everyone that was at night one was at night two, so I'm sure it hit hard.
I would venture to guess 90% of the people there for night two were there night one. And yeah, how it ends was the first time they played it since your Cleveland run. I think the night two show, if I remember right. I can't remember.
Yep, that's right.
Really nice to see it come back. Just touching on that real quick. Just a terrific song. And then, yeah, the slow ready jam, it was outstanding. It's like 10 minutes of joy once again, bringing back the joy. I think outside of the big surprise at the end of set two, this was probably the highest energy, biggest pop off of the night because the people were really feeling it. And it was a big surprise after not getting that jam on night one. And walking out the door on night one, I saw a lot of people like, oh man, like that was so cool. But I love the slow ready jam. Like I hope that they don't skip it like that for the rest of this tour or whatever. And then boom, you get the jam night two. Let's go.
Yeah, and I love when they do stuff with this to 2 and 3 night runs, but I thought it was really interesting and a bold choice to make it the set one closer, but an awesome choice, like a fucking awesome choice to put it there.
So good. It went over as well as you could have hoped.
Yeah, because that's amazing. And kudos to them for doing something so crazy like that because it's an awesome choice. But set two, this is going to go down in history in Goose lore, this set two. So probably walking through this step by step again because it starts off with a solid Arrow, which Arrow is a great set two opener. Got to be like at least like top 5 or 6 songs for that spot.
Yeah.
I thought it didn't reach maybe the same heights as some of the other more standout versions, but was still very good. What were your thoughts here?
That's literally my main note was first off, this was a Rick fest through and through once the jam hit. I think Arrow is a fantastic call for set two opener, and I think it's a great burst of energy when it is a Rick fest like this. And yeah, this one may not have covered as much exploratory ground as the all-time great Arrows, but it was just great set listing at the end of the day and a great sign of things to come for the end of this show with the energy up front early and often in this set.
Yeah, and just because it's not all time doesn't mean it was very good, because I made a point to write, but still very good 2 times. So it does have a really awesome peak, and they are very deliberate in getting there, and really nice runs from Rick. So I don't want to diminish it in any way. If you're not the best Arrow, that just means you're fighting up against a lot of other good versions. It's still very, very solid. So
yeah, I mean, standard fare Arrow is awesome and electric.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, they had to get the energy in there early and often to test the structural integrity of the Louisville Palace for the end of the set, right?
Like, 100%.
Surprised the walls didn't blow down. Anyway.
Well, and then we get one of our mutual favorites in the 2 slot here, Rosewood Heart, one of the most gorgeous songs ever. So I'm sure you had to have loved this, especially this slotting here. I feel like is genius.
Oh, terrific. And always welcome in a set list. Easily one of my top 5 favorite Goose tunes. And this is another one that kind of stuck true to a quote unquote more traditional type 1, if you call it, Rosewood, with a really kind of bluesy, riffing back and forth early jam by the guys that built slowly to a really beautiful, gorgeous finish. I thought that Rick's tone late in this jam was really, really piercing compared to the normal Rosewood tone and kind of slightly scratchy. And it was a nice triumphant feel that brought to kind of accompany the pretty keys and awesome bass that Trevor was laying down. So it was a really fun Rosewood. I'm not the kind of person to complain about standard fare or whatever. I think it's great. If it was a Rosewood that was 8 minutes long, that I would have been like, oh man, because I love the Rosewood jam. But I'll take any kind of jam on Rosewood Heart because it's a banger.
Well, I mean, to your point, Rosewood Heart barely ever has a below average jam. It's just it doesn't happen for that song. So I don't really need to talk about the jam, but I did just want to talk about the peak. I thought the peak was pretty unique. It was very controlled chaos. Cotter's double taps pushing them to new heights, along with Rick's unbelievable sequencing of screaming and whirling runs. I thought it was a very unique peak for the Rosewood Heart, and maybe the jam overall isn't, anything crazy, but it's definitely worth listening because the end of it is just blistering.
Yeah, there's something about what Rick's doing that just takes it over the top from a 10 to an 11 in intensity. And to have a song as beautiful as Rosewood Heart in a venue as beautiful as the Louisville Palace Theater, I can't believe I haven't touched on that yet. Absolutely stunning venue. And quick side note, by the way, on this, which is the most absurd part of the whole weekend outside of the music, is I walk into the venue on night one and I see my buddy sees me, who I haven't seen in 7 years. And he's the general manager of the venue. And he's like, Alex, what's going on? And shout out to you, Justice. He was like so nice. He was like giving me the tour of the venue and stuff. He was neglecting his duties to catch up with an old buddy, but it was awesome to catch up. But just small world vibes there. And shout out to that venue. If you can go, it's absolutely gorgeous, just like a good Rosewood Heart.
Unbelievable. That's so freaking cool that
Small
that
world
happened.
moment.
Yeah.
I just had to shout out Justice because he's the man.
Unbelievable. That's so cool. Adds a whole new layer to this. So yeah, and I definitely hadn't even thought about that context. I'm glad you brought that up, but seeing Rosewood in that venue, that's, chef's kiss.
Unreal.
And then we get Tomorrow Never Knows, bringing back some goons, or at least goons adjacent. What were your thoughts here?
I put down this jam is Goons Light, if that's a thing.
The mind meld continues.
Yeah, normally kind of blaring synth loops that we get for a Goons jam were turned down a notch, and it gave this Goons more of a brooding, exploratory feel than just like we're going straight to the club and raging all night vibe. And I like them trying something different with the style than the normal blow the roof off the venue dance party vibe. This is just kind of nice head bobbing, let's vibe territory, and it was fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. It reminded me a little bit of like the foie gras and crumpets kind of vibes in some aspects. I thought they developed this jam even more in that vein, worked it out a little bit further. But that ominous progression near the end is just really, really good. And it was a good example of cohesion that I don't know that I've necessarily seen that level of full band cohesion in a Goons jam so far. And I just thought it was really cool how they all collectively got to that point because it was running smooth by the end of it.
It was, and it was such a nice aesthetic in a set list that didn't have anything that felt quite like that overall, that I wanted it to last even longer, but there was a lot more to get to, obviously. So I'm not disappointed by any means, but it was just very pleasant. It was just a vibe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a hard cover to find usually. That one can take folks a lot to get to. So to get a standout version like this as part of an already just epic set, it's just kind of, I feel like this one may get forgotten as time goes on, but it's still just really, really good. I'd highly encourage people to listen to it because it's just a really good example of, I think your term, Goons Light, we might need to start operating with that because that kind of describes it perfectly.
Yeah. Diet Goons.
Diet Goons. But then we get this monster drip field.
Yes.
How was this?
You said that about the Tomorrow Never Knows. I think that people might forget about this drip field, but I think, and I hope people will grow to appreciate it more with time, because every time I listen to it, there's something new I find in it that's gotten better for me. And I think the interplay between Rick and Peter on the guitar early here is so awesome. People love to gush on two guitar goose, and it's hard to get better than this duality in tone and chemistry during the early part of this drip field jam. It's almost like a delay heavy looping sound on top of the grimiest fuzz you'll ever hear this band put out early. And then Peter switches over to the keys and Rick just goes back to the more familiar digital sauce octave fuzz sound that takes us most of the way through this jam, hitting a beautiful uplifting peak that broke down into like this heavenly post-peak outro that you get to the end. It doesn't feel like it's 20 minutes have gone by and you have your hands on your head like, oh my gosh, I need to just breathe for a second. What just happened here? And then when you listen back, you just find more texture, more layering, more gorgeous slight changes to the melody that just take this up a notch. I'm not sure it's going to be one of those drip fields that's remembered as great as the all-time greats, but I think it's just a fantastic ride. It's a almost more pleasant ride than some of the other drip fields that get kind of more challenging to listen to in a way and more interesting, but this is just pure pleasure.
Yeah, I got to be honest. This drip field's my second biggest highlight from the whole run. I mean, I think if I was there in person, what happens after this drip field probably would have had me jumping through ceilings, but I wasn't there. So, like, just appreciating it from a musical perspective, I think this drip field is just outstanding.
Yeah,
Kind of uses the industrial feeling early on that we're all familiar with, but even that, it's oriented slightly differently than we've seen in the past because Peter's progression is already situated in a more upbeat position from where he normally might be. And that just kind of makes the platform just slightly adjacent, I feel like, of the industrial sound that they would normally start out from. And it helps propel them to this really powerful and blissy peak that Dripfield, more times than not, probably isn't going to end up at. And so for me, I just thought this was really great. And I'll just sidebar as well. Peter, to me, was the MVP of this run. He had all these little interesting things going on where typical off ramps would be just slightly augmented or modified by him just choosing to use a slightly different chord voicing or, just a slightly different progression. And it just led to them ending up in interesting different places just from things being slightly different than they normally are.
exactly. It's just the slightest shifts take that industrial tone, and even though it's like grimy early on, the counterplay of what Peter's doing just like even makes that uplifting in a weird way, which is why
Yeah.
I lean towards like this is just a great easy listen in a weird way. It's not like challenging you in like a, oh, this is dark and making me have feelings. This is like I feel happy and great.
100%. 100%. And it's just fun to see them make those little changes because sometimes it ends up in these big results, which we've been seeing a lot of lately. And so that's exciting as a hardcore parentheses nerdy fan about this stuff. These little differences can lead to some really epic jams. And I mean, this is definitely on my playlist.
And I'm looking at it now, and this was the first time they played Dripfield since the version at MSG, which was also a shorter version. So it's been a long time since we got a good
A big
jammed
one.
out Dripfield. So
Yeah.
great to see a 20-minute jam here and a good one.
So I'm technically hosting, although that's kind of arbitrary when it comes to you and me. I'm going to just take off my host hat for a second. Take the wheel, Alex. A big moment of Goose lore and history happens after this drip field.
So state of the art AEIOU is the set closer here, and it was just a normal version. No. Dripfield ends, the second mic stand starts coming out, and Jim James walks on stage of My Morning Jacket fame. And Jim James is just such a performer, man. I haven't seen My Morning Jacket in a long time, and I caught them quite a few times when I lived in Atlanta still, and it was just such a treat to see him back on stage again, and remember what a great performer he is, what a great artist he is, and he's just one of the all-time great frontmen of the modern era. And this cover always slaps, but to see him perform it in this setting with our favorite band and Rick jumping in, adding accompanying vocals and just taking it over the top, and the slight change more towards Jim James's original version than how we hear Goose do it was just so cool. And he meshed so well with the rest of the band, especially with Rick, obviously, with them trading guitar licks back and forth during the jam. But this was insanely electric, by far the highest crowd pop and energy in the room between the two nights. And it is one of those things where it is hard to capture that energy on a video compared to how it was in the room. But I think if you talk to anyone who was in there, this has got to be discussed as one of the all-time great guest spots, sit-ins this band has ever had, because it's an all-timer in terms of a frontman, but also just the way that he elevated a song that's already one of the all-time favorite covers that this band does to a whole new level is just remarkable. And I really hope he sits in again at Viva El Gonzo. He's got to now after this, right?
I I mean, I would be comfortable if anyone wanted to start betting, if we want to take bets on this stuff, I would be comfortable putting some money down that that's got to happen again. I mean, just watching from home to see the explosion of energy from the crowd, to see how much joy was on the boys' faces to be doing this with him, who they clearly look up to. I mean, almost their whole catalog is built around a style of music that My Morning Jacket is one of the early front runners for, from the 2000s moving forward. So
Yeah.
like it's an enormous moment, and I think, like, even 10 years from now, wherever Goose is at by that point, this is still going to be looked back as, wow, can you remember when they, in his hometown of Louisville, brought him out to do his song that they've been I mean, and they do something similar with an up and coming band here in a couple shows that we'll get into later in this.
Mhm.
But I just love music stuff like this, and it's definitely a big part of Goose lore, and it's just very cool to see them, get to play with their heroes. It's happened a bunch now lately, but this is definitely going to be one of the more landmark examples of that.
And it's cool when it's like it's his song and he's just joining the
Yeah.
band to do it and then just crush it for an even crazier version. It's a lot different than like when Trey sat in, which is obviously probably considered the all-time great sit-in for everybody, but he was doing Goose tunes and Goose would sit in with him, but it wasn't Goose in their set playing Fish tunes and Tab tunes, right? So just really really cool that they did it like this, and it was an awesome set closer. I really thought that, once again, the structural integrity of the Louisville Palace Theater needs to be checked after these shows.
Yeah, and they keep him on stage for the encore, so clearly they were having a good time together and building up that chemistry for Gonzo, perhaps. So I think it's kind of interesting the song they chose to do with him in the encore. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
So when I saw the paper set list, I think it was supposed to be just a hot tea encore without Jim James. So they must have just had so much fun at State of the Art. They were like, "Hey, which one of the covers that we do you know? Do you know? Don't do it. Let's just do it." And they did do it instead of don't doing it.
I don't know if I can add anything to that.
It was a great call. It was a great call for the
Yeah.
sit-in. It allowed both these great vocalists to shine and give the crowd another memorable moment. It was almost as big of a pop off as State of the Art, just because everyone loves Jim James.
Yeah, and any excuse to keep him on stage, I think, is great. And I think "Don't Do It" is one of those rare songs in music history where it's probably something where, I mean, it's a pretty simple 3-chord progression. So any artist that you need in a pinch to, hey, can you do this? They probably can, and they probably know the band and know that song. So I just thought it was such a joy to see them all having fun together for 2 songs back to back. And the fact that he came back out on stage told me he had a really good time doing it too. So
Yep.
just good to see the vibes.
Yeah, and shout out again to my buddy Justice. He found us in our seats. We got there a little early and we're sitting down. He just sat down right next to me. He's like, "Hey, there's a big surprise tonight." And I was like, "Don't." He's like, "Just make sure you stay the whole show," and then walked off.
That's a
So
good
he
friend
nailed
right
it.
there.
That's a great
Yeah.
friend.
Understood the assignment for sure.
Yeah, it was awesome, and I am so excited that everyone in Louisville got to see a Louisville hometown hero at their local show. I feel so fortunate to have been there traveling from abroad, but that's got to be just a cool all-time Louisville moment if you're a Goose fan.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Anyone that's a local, that's got to be just like legendary stuff as well. So legendary on multiple levels.
Yeah, and the legendary doesn't stop there with this run that you went on after me, right, buddy?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with the folks back at home. I got in at 4:30 in the morning, so uh, the last thing I can remember is being at these shows. So we'll see how it goes. Me remembering any of this, and also, Goose still doesn't have the streams up, so
Oh,
we're
they
gonna
are they are
freestyle.
up now. They just
Oh,
popped up. I see them on Bandcamp, and Charlotte's on Nugs right now, at least.
okay. Well, they weren't this morning, but either way, we're gonna get into it. So I was at first Ameris Bank in Alpharetta, which I think I read the last one. You want to read this set for me, Alex?
I will. Although these shows are so cool that I feel like you should be reading them, but I will read this one because you deserve the next one.
Fair
Set
enough.
1, Alpharetta, Georgia, September 26th, 2025. Opening with Running Up That Hill, Into Flowdown, The Whales, Your Direction, Madalena, Animal, and Yeti to close out set 1. And then set 2 open with A Fish in the Sea, then a big modern Into Loose Ends, and then This Old Sea into Madhuvan to close out set 2 with a Hot Tea encore. Hot is the way I describe this set, especially set 2 on. So Hot Tea was a great call to match the theme and the vibes. But where do we want to start, man?
So I'll be totally transparent. I do not have a ton of notes on set 1. I just want to say overall, I thought the flow was weird starting off with set 1. I like getting running up that hill. I think that's a treat. I just think opener is kind of a weird place for it. And then going into flow down in the whales from there was also kind of strange pivot. And so to me, the first set was a little bit uneven. The main things that stand out to me about set 1, and if you want to go in more depth, please definitely do. But Your Direction and Animal, I thought were both quite good. Nothing
Yep.
groundbreaking, although I thought it was nice that they took Your Direction out for a little bit more extended time. But I'm also going to talk to you for about an hour about what happened in a particular song in set 2. So that's probably also occupying a bunch of my brain space here.
That is very fair. I'm very similar to you. I didn't think that this set 1 was necessarily for the most diehard fans in the world or curated for that part of the fan base. I think it felt very festival light, to stay with the light theme in a lot of ways. Running Up That Hill is a great call. Awesome for anyone who's a fan of Goose and been listening, especially since Cotter joined. But then you get a flow down, the Whales, both shorter tunes. The Whales making a nice little comeback, first time since, I want to say, June, early June, maybe. I can't remember. I think it was that Vegas Phoenix timeframe. I got to look
That
that
might
up.
be right.
But anyway, then Your Direction. I thought this was the highlight of set 1 for me. Listening back to it, I just love a jammed out Your Direction. I think it's a great ramp, and they don't do it often enough. And sometimes the band gets in this like zone early on where it's just Peter laying down pretty keys and Rick playing these flowery light lead parts with these filled with a lot of double stops, and it's just goosebump chill inducing every time for me. And this one ramps up to a nice, relatively still light but happy jam with some intensity thrown in roughly around the 13-minute mark. And I just thought that overall, this was a masterclass by Cotter once again, driving the feel of this thing, keeping it chill, and then when it hits that 13-minute mark, driving the thing through the roof. And in a lot of ways, the way he accents on the cymbals between his always fantastic Tom's work on this one really sets the tone on the end part of this jam. So I just thought that the peak on this thing was great. I like the low key vibe of it early, and I just thought it was a nice ride out of a yacht rock tune.
Yeah, definitely. I had a lot of people coming up to me at set break saying similar things, that Your Direction was definitely the main highlight for them. I guess I will say also, I liked getting Yeti as the end of set 1 without the kicks. I thought that was a good energy pop for a set 1 that frankly kind of needed it. And I did also enjoy getting my first Madalena. It is a gorgeous song. I very much ranked it pretty highly on my list of album songs, so that was nice to get as well. But just kind of uneven flow, and that was kind of the main thing. But boy, did they ever make it up to me in set 2.
They did. But real quick, just a few short notes I had on Animal.
Yeah,
I thought
please.
it sounded a lot like the typical Animals we heard in 2023 and 2024, but with a little twist on it, going to a minor key jam instead of a major key jam. So it kept a lot of that classic feel, but almost made it like a yearning feel to it too, which was really cool. And then yeah, you said Yeti. I also wrote that down. I love this closing a set, really high energy. Thought this one might take a ride into the Goons, but once again, maybe for like a 30-second run, it hit Goons light. But then it just went back to normal Funk Fest, and I thought it was terrific. I think it's a great way to close a set. And yeah, I think it was the right call to not do the kicks for this one, to just let it ride and be a high energy fest for 13 solid minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah, definitely.
The set needed it because, like you said, it was like a little uneven with a lot of shorter tunes, and then like the longest runtime of both Animal and Your Direction being like so low key, right? Like they're
Yeah,
more chill.
100%. And Yeti finally got the lawn kind of engaged and more dancing and everything like that. I did have some people say that they wanted to hear the pumped up kicks, which I could have also seen that side of it, but I didn't necessarily think that we needed another sing along because people had quite the fun time singing their lungs out during Animal. So Yeti, I think, without the pumped up kicks was the right call there to end it, and we had a really good energy pop. But
And last thing, sorry, I just looked it up real quick. It was the first whale since Phoenix on the 4th of June, so long gap.
good call. Yeah. And The Whales is a great song. It was a weird pivot going from Running Up That Hill to two country-ish rock songs back to back, and then going into yacht rock. It was just kind of a little bit of a chaotic start there.
It was different. It's cool they're bringing back a lot of songs that hadn't been around in a minute, or just trying to get them in the rotation for this tour. But it did feel uneven. But I want to let you geek out about this set too here. Even though you're hosting, I'm taking the reins now and letting you just geek out.
It's hard to even know where to start because I want to cover like all of it. But Fish in the Sea starts off set 2, kind of just immediately telling everyone, "Hey, we're going to be jamming this set." And I've gotten 3 Fish in the Seas this year, and very similar vibes to all the previous versions. Industrial groove. This one was a little bit notable, I guess, because it had less of the Spanish style interpolated grooves that we saw pop up, heavily in Milwaukee, but I think also a little bit in the Cleveland version. And it's also not as long of a jam as those, but still very solid. Kind of hides next to that borderline ominous space, but nothing too crazy. And I definitely think like Guilford and Milwaukee are still better versions of this song, but very solid, and a great inflection of energy here right away.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a running joke on this podcast of like, oh, this is like a top 5 set 2 opener, and there's gonna be 100 of them. This is an awesome set 2 opener. I'm a huge fan of it. So
Yeah.
I can't say much more than you did on it. It did kind of match the same vibes as some of the other ones we've heard this year, and nice that it's getting taken for a little more of a ride than we've seen in the past. But I think this one was just there to once again be a tone setter. That's been a theme of this tour, where it's like we have a theme in mind for the night, and here it is, bright and early in a set.
Definitely. And it brought us right into, I think, your and my surefire locks for this show, which was Big Modern showing up. And it was a very interesting and exciting version. Started off with a snappy, funky pocket, and it gradually works its way into a furious intensity, highlighted by Cotter's endless rolls and Rick's clever licks. Descended in tempo to this slower tempo, funky pocket that Peter accentuated with like some sprightly touches on keys and brightened it up. And as they ease into this, Trevor starts throwing in some melodic runs, and Peter starts adding texture. And I really thought at this point we were going to start going into a phase of Big Modern where it was going to start getting truly unique. And if we had like another 5-minute section on this, I think this thing starts to become, a real monster player at the end of year and stuff like that. But they collectively decided to step down into something else. But did you have anything on this Big Modern here, Alex? Because it's one of our faves.
This one, I love the transition it took into Loose Ends, but to that point, like it needed 5 more minutes to just, and then the outro on top of that, and it would have been arguably the best version of the year.
Yeah.
This one just didn't quite cut it because of that abrupt stop from that super cool vibe just before the transition, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't have a ton more to add. I just wanted to shout out. I thought the early charge into the jam with the bass lick that Trevor was playing was fantastic. Sounded like a 70s pop song in the best kind of way, bass line. It was cool that became the focal point on this Big Modern, and Peter latched onto the same riff early, and then Rick kind of decided, I'm just going to navigate the space between these two's excellent work and roulette wheel of special effects before landing on a bluesy rock feel. But that outro little bit was just so cool.
So good.
It was like a quick pivot into that lo-fi, slightly funky feel. I have no idea what Peter was rocking there, but it literally sounded like something you'd expect to hear on the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack for any of these 90s kids. Like underwater, cool music. That game is known for a soundtrack. So even though I'm a geek,
no, for sure,
it is revered. And it was just super retro chiptune kind of vibes with a lot of reverb on it, and it just sounded terrific. And I was geeking out until that transition into Loose Ends, which I still enjoyed, but I loved that sound, and it was super unique to Big Modern.
Yeah, and this is why I was saying like Peter's been like the MVP to me lately, because he keeps doing these just subtle things, and you may not like notice them on first listen for everything, but even though they're not like big ads, they're just enough to where it makes Rick do something a little bit different and Trevor do something a little bit different. And then they all end up at this completely different endpoint than we were expecting. And I feel like this Big Modern was getting really interesting because of the brightness that Peter was adding in through his different textures. I use the word sprightly, and that's really still the only word that comes to mind, but it just had a little bit more like pep and happiness to it. And it felt like there was a bliss section or an upbeat rock section waiting for them to take if they wanted to. And look, I'm not going to complain. Loose Ends is always a fun treat, point blank, period. It is. And here's no different. But I am going to be wondering where that Big Modern might have ended up with another 5 more minutes. But it's still a very solid version even without that. So
yeah, it's stellar. Like it's an appreciate what we got,
yeah,
kind of thing, and just I hope they go back to that kind of sound at some point in some song, because I hadn't heard anything quite like that from Goose.
yeah,
and I loved it.
definitely. It works so well. And like I said, Loose Ends was really fun, but the energy had been up for quite a while at this point. So they brought it down with Old Sea, which for my money is the greatest cool down song in the catalog. It's my favorite slow Goose song.
Yeah.
And super emotional, nothing crazy. There wasn't like a wild, interesting Old Sea jam on it, like there have been a few of. But did you have any notes on the Old Sea before I start just letting my jaw hit the floor over and over again for a few minutes on this Madhavan?
No, not a ton of just similar vibes. Love it as a cool down tune. I think it is arguably the best one, to your point. I think that's like a 3-way deal now between This Old Sea, Bob Don, and Jed Stone. Like if you pick one of those three, you can't go wrong, right? But absolutely terrific.
That's a good call out. I think you nailed the 3 that are the ideal choices there. I can rock with that and co-sign that 100%.
Because they're both like chill, a vibe, and then they can ratchet up to like a crazy solo, super emotional in all 3 cases, and then lead into something else too, which is just great.
Yeah, absolutely. They can do it all. But the highlight for me for my 2 shows is this Madhavan that happens next. So I think it's going to rightly be talked about for quite a while. I did not think there was any Madhavan coming for the Milwaukee one, but this one I think has certainly entered the discussion at least.
To the talks.
It started off in that similar eerie haunted carnival vibe that leaves a lot of space in this one though. And Peter doing this run that again gave me like a teetering haunted merry-go-round vibe, and Rick just somehow effortlessly gliding through and around those circular patterns. And then Peter pivots to angular riffing that he's bouncing against Rick's playing. And all the while, Cotter's like steadily increasing his tempo, swirling between his toms and snare. Trevor's underlining all of Cotter's hits. It all sounds incredibly chaotic, and it was incredibly chaotic. But it was truly amazing to hear like the different progressions that Peter lines up. He tried like 4 or 5 different types of runs, and then contrasting that with Rick's absolutely surgical precision at just firing into every single blank space available. And then they drop back into this almost mini reprisal of Madhavan, but with a different feel. And then they keep alternating for like a minute of coming back to it, and then they would go back to something a little bit more positive. And then they slide down altogether. And this is the point where I truly was just hands on head, losing my mind entirely. But they go into a slower tempo, blissier section. Was not expecting that at all. But my God, they start to slowly build that back up to a gorgeous peak. And Rick's kind of looking at Cotter to cue it up, takes on almost the same feeling as like an everything must go peak. It's like that same level of joy and energy before reprising Madhavan again, this time for real, not a fake, and bringing it back home. And it's solidly in my running for Jam of the Year. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk on the Alpharetta Madhavan.
I was waiting for the full hour, dude. I mean, come on.
Outstanding. Blew my mind.
It is outstanding, and I won't say too much on it. I loved the early entry point into this jam a lot. The trippy, scary, creepy, almost lost in space, straight ripped out of a Kubrick movie kind of feel to it. And it really transported the venue and just set the tone early that this was going to be a crazy ride. And that tension is lingering throughout, even in the joyful sections of this in a way, which I just think is so cool. And the only other thing I have to say, because you said it so well about the rest of the jam, is that Cotter's arms at points were doing things that 2 arms on a human should not be doing. Literally looked like the cartoon growing up of the Roadrunner's legs, but just 2 hands just like going crazy.
Yeah, you almost have to ask yourself, is that an octopus doing a really good human impression up there on stage? Because
yeah,
he's insane.
Last thing is I don't know. I don't know watching if it's different there, but watching from home, I was looking at the clock too, and I was like, oh, maybe they think like they got to wrap it up with the kind of fake outs into the Madhuvan outro, and they were just like, nah, fuck it, we'll just keep playing. Like that's kind of what it felt like. Where it's like, oh, we should wrap it up. No, this is fun. Oh, we should no, this is fun. Let's just keep going. I don't know. I wasn't there. That's what it felt like at home.
I hope it's because they were having fun. To me, it seemed like they knew they wanted a long Madhuvan to close this thing down from the get-go, because I want to say if I looked at my watch at the time, it was like 10:35 or something when they started this, maybe 10:40, but like it seemed like this was going to be the end of the show either way, and they just fully went for broke. I do want to also call out, not necessarily directly near me, but I did witness quite a lot of chomping at this particular show, and it was really great because when this song got scary, I think people were a little too scared to talk, and it was kind of amusing to me because it was kind of reminding me of that stupid video was "Shut Up and Don't Talk to Me, Scary Big Modern is on," and it was kind of like "Shut Up, Don't Talk to Me, Scary Madhuvan's on."
Oh,
So
I love it. that is great, because it was hard to gauge that from. I saw some comments about it from people skeeting on Blue Sky. I fucking hate saying that. On Blue Sky, saying that there was a lot of chompers. There was one point during the jam, and you talked about it a little bit, where it went to like near silence and just gorgeous guitar work, and there was a nice crowd pop off there, just appreciating that great part of the jam, and then it just escalated quickly in a way that would make Ron Burgundy proud. But it was just fantastic, and I was hoping that the chomping wasn't too bad, but it sounds like it wasn't great.
The chomping was pretty bad, especially, and part of that I think maybe have been like the weird flow of set one. I think a lot of the audience, me included, had trouble finding a point to get engaged and hooked into the show. It didn't feel like a lot of us were plugged in because it just felt like it was a little bit of a rocky start. But I felt like for the most part anyways, once we hit like maybe the middle of set two, everyone was kind of locked in. But I thought especially once Madhuvan went scary, I felt like everyone was just kind of like, what is happening? And everyone had to like focus and pay attention because they were either like confused or super into it or both. And the audience engagement when they finished that unexpected Bliss Eve section and came back into Madhuvan for real, the amount of like fists raised in the air like in victory was very satisfying because it was what a lot of us were feeling.
Oh, it was so good. I was trying to find a clip to put on our socials, and it was hard to get like a minute and a half that could grab the ride that was that Madhuvan well, but I tried. It's just incredible.
You did good.
And the more you listen, the more it grows on you. Those two from February are going to be tough to beat, but this one has got a puncher's chance, I think. Like it's up there with those.
It's going to be similar, I think, to last year, where there's a lot of Madhuvans that have their individual champions, and there'll be some crossover and some lack of crossover. But I told someone right before the song started, and it was their first show, and they were asking me what song it was, and I told them Madhuvan, and I said, this is kind of the holy grail for what you chase at a show. And I'm glad that I said that to them, because then they delivered an all-time version, and that's kind of the point I'd like to make here is more times than not, when Madhuvan pops up, it's going to be something that's at least somewhat legendary and something that people are going to want to talk about to at least a certain extent, and that's what makes the song so awesome.
Yes, yeah, it was terrific, and I'm so glad that you got it at your first show on this run, and then you have a whole another night to just like geek out and relish in the joy of that while getting more Goose.
Yeah, and I'll just touch real short here because I didn't have many notes on it. Hot Tea is always a solid closer, but what I put was we all left thinking about that Madhuvan either way.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's a fun closer. I think it adds to the party vibe of the show, and it finally reared its head after being on the paper set list for like what felt like 10 shows in a row, since it wasn't even on the paper set list when they played it at the Gorge, I guess, but they played it there, and then it had been on a bunch recently. But yeah, good to see it. Good slotting. But that Madhuvan had people like in shambles from how much it blew minds.
I am people. I was people. So anything else on Atlanta before we move on to Charlotte?
No, I had FOMO. I missed that venue, and I had so much fun with the pictures you were sending me, and how much you were enjoying yourself at a venue I've been to many times when I lived in greater Atlanta area. It's a great place. So anyone who's thinking about going to Alpharetta for another show, go.
Yeah, and that's kind of a weird like crossover because it was your home venue for many, many years. Obviously, you were an Atlanta local for much of your life, and now I've just moved here and this was my first show as an Atlanta
Yeah.
local. So some poetic stuff happening there, but I could not have asked for a better first show as a local to this area. And I'll just say very quickly, first time going to that venue, gorgeous venue. I love how surrounded by trees it is. I love how much the lawn feels like it's part of like coming out of a forest or something, even though it's not. It's just got that like one with nature's feel, maybe not like SPAC level or something like that, but it's in that vibe. It kind of reminded me of the Woodlands too, just in how like clean and nice everything was. Really outstanding venue. So to Alex's point, yes, if there's a show here, or especially a Goose show for that matter, definitely check it out. It's one of my favorites that I've been to.
Yeah, it's a relatively new venue compared to the other big one in the Atlanta area, and it's just like the better one of the two compared to Lakewood. So if you have to pick between a show in Alpharetta or in Atlanta at Lakewood, go to Atlanta to Ameris Bank.
I've heard some things about Lakewood already in my brief time living here that have made me convinced I will never go to Lakewood. So
Oh, they always get a really banger show that you're like, fuck, I got to go to Lakewood. But yeah.
Well, anyways, the next day I drove the 4.5 hours up to Charlotte to what used to be, ironically, my old home venue for amphitheater, the place I've seen by far the most concerts in my life, to see Goose at PNC in Charlotte. So I think, is it my turn to read?
It is your turn to read.
Okay, so I will go ahead and start off here. We've got Royal, Iguana Song, I'm Writing a Novel, Drive, Me and My Uncle, Your Ocean, Silver Rising, and Hunger Sight to finish off set 1. And then set 2, we've got Thatch, Creatures, Hollywood Nights, So Ready, and Give It Time. So one quick note I did want to make, both of these shows were, the opening band was Penelope Road. They are a truly awesome band, and I caught both of their opening sets, and they're definitely up and coming, and if you get a chance, I would definitely check them out. And they're a little bit involved in this show, so I just wanted to call that out. But Royal and Iguana Song to start off. Any thoughts on this 1-2 punch here, Alex?
Royal's a great opener. I thought it was really fun. I think it's great slotting for it. It's got a great groove to it. It's short. It gets the crowd engaged early, and good sing along. So I was a big fan of it slotting there. And then Iguana Song is just a straight up banger. It's going to continue to live in that 12 minute and 30-second range, but I'm here for it at this point. If we get a crazy one, like, let's go. But I absolutely love that fast paced 2-guitar Goose going on during the song. And it's quickly becoming one of my favorite Peter tunes.
Yeah, I think Royal's a very cool opener as well. I thought this one had like an absolutely electric solo from Rick. It was popping early on, and it gives a lot of good energy to start. And they're still obviously establishing this song, but I would definitely like to see it continue to be used in this spot. I think it's a really good tone setter for the show. Iguana Song continues to taunt me. Every time, I swear to God, it feels like they're going to go and run away with it. But this one had like a little quiet Blissy section that felt a little bit different or new to it, where it could have morphed into something else, but then they just kind of choose to ease back into the theme. But I'm kind of with you. It probably will live in this time space for the foreseeable future, but at times it also just feels like maybe it's going to go for it. I don't know. It feels
It's
like
just
it's
like
possible.
Salt, dude, except it's, instead of like, is this the greatest version ever? It's like, is this going to be the one that breaks off?
Yeah. Because it feels like it. I like all these new songs that they've added in recently. They're all clearly just like finding their home and their place in the set list and things like that. But it does feel like they keep changing them and adding little things to them where all of them kind of collectively have the potential to jump off. And so I'm trying not to discount it, because it's like, if I see a 25-minute Iguana Song, like, I'm not going to be shocked. Or if I see a 25-minute Your Direction, like, it's not going to shock me, because it always feels possible. But then I'm also like trying not to get my hopes up around it. So it's a little bit confusing time for me with Iguana Song.
Yeah, it's about living in the present, which is hard to do because we're always like optimistic about
Yeah.
like what ultimate version of something could be, but appreciating what we got.
Yeah.
It's something we could all do a little better, I think.
Oh, for sure. And it is great where it's at. And then I'm Writing a Novel, always a fun cover. I don't have a lot to add there, but
Great cover.
I thought it was a very nice compact jam. I'm not sure if you had any thoughts on this one.
I'll be quick. I love this drive. It was a nice compact jam on it, like you said. Lo-fi groove that starts picking up when Peter starts throwing in these pretty key shots, and it leads to this almost playful back and forth with Rick. And all the while, Trevor's holding it down absolutely tremendously behind all of this with these moody runs that added so much to the energy of this portion of the jam early on. And then it just hit a flying peak that came after a huge emotional wave throughout that then allowed the band to soar slowly down into a sweet, soothing transition into Me and My Uncle. So it was a little bit of a ride. I thought they fit quite a bit of exploring in there for its shorter runtime. And while we all love going back to my point just before this, we love a 30-minute drive. I'll take a 15-minute one like this.
For sure, for sure. And I think if I had been able to see the future and to what was going to get the time devoted to it, I would have been fine with it. I think in the moment, I was a little bit disappointed that the drive didn't keep going because it's drive and, you just know what's possible with it. But I did love the ambient atmospheric space, and I love Trevor's melodic playing. Like you said, I thought that was the standout of the song for sure. Is it felt like Trevor smoked a joint between this and I'm writing a novel and was just freelancing throughout all of it. And it was just really, really incredible. But that transition into Me and My Uncle was fabulous. And they do obviously such a great job with the Dead covers. The crowd went absolutely insane when Me and My Uncle started. So I always just think it's so cool to see Deadheads getting their tunes. And that was a really, really fun one.
Yeah, it's a great time. And I love a good Mamu meme and Mamu chant. Anything related to Goose, and you got it. So love it.
100%. And I'm pretty sure this was my first Your Ocean. So, I mean, that's just a gorgeous song. And I'm shocked at how long it's taken me to get it, but I'm really happy that I did. I think I say it a lot every time it pops up in a set list once every month or two when they're on tour, that the song should be played more often because it's clearly a standout. And I don't have a ton of notes around this or Silver Rising, but both excellent versions, and the crowd really responded to both of them. Silver Rising in particular, it continues to impress me how much of a chokehold it's got on the audience because they get up for it every single time, and the solo's got to be one of the best.
Yeah. Now that I'm looking at this set list and seeing Your Ocean, I'm realizing that's probably like just a notch below that tier of cooldown songs we talked about in terms of slotting, but it's also awesome. Like it's 3B behind or 1D behind 1A, 1B, 1C.
Yeah, 100%.
And Silver Rising, always a crowd pleaser, great sing along, amazing soloing, like you said. I think it can fit anywhere in a set too. We've seen it close a set before, and it's been great. I think this is actually perfect slotting for it, especially when you get a monster hunger site like we're going to talk about here.
Probably my second biggest highlight from the show. Peter, again, just I don't know what's gotten into him the last week or so, but finds another cool progression that picks up the pace almost right away. He's definitely the leader in the clubhouse here. And once they all follow suit, he subtly switches it again. He's just finding these really awesome moments where he's got something really good. The band's behind him. They're all locked in it. They all agree it's good. And then he just makes a subtle shift to it and the jam morphs. And it's really been fun to watch for me. And once they follow suit with that change, they pick up and it morphs several more times with a lot of pulling from Rick and Trevor as they start to buy in. And there's a subtle downshift in tempo, and it just turns into this rowdy rock finish to close down set one in absolute murderous style.
The ending is ludicrous, and there's something about North Carolina hunger sites. It's like North Carolina tradition at this point. That there's got to be a little extra sauce on the ending run because this was as ludicrous as that Winston-Salem one last year in terms of just raw, unadulterated energy. I think that you said it really well. I just wanted to also shout out that the interplay between Trevor and Cotter midway through the jam was really front and center to my ears, even though Rick was supposed to be the focal point. It was almost like he was dancing around in the background because those two were shining so much at one point. And yeah, the peak was so cool on this thing. Loved the huge splashy accents to close this out versus just being kind of a hyperspace race to the finish line like we often see. This was a little different.
Yeah, definitely. And it's well said, the Trevor and Cotter mind meld, because this jam in particular shifts tempo so often and so frequently. And there's so many small, subtle shifts in that regard that their chemistry is kind of like key to making this whole thing work. And it allows the jam to morph so effortlessly. So mind meld's happening all around. And that's just a really baller way to close down your set one.
It is. It's about as good as it gets, right?
but not as good as the set 2 opener, which for me is about as perfect as life gets.
So,
So
real quick, I'll jump in. For those who don't know, Mr. Mikey himself, has been somehow chasing Thatch for God knows how many shows because he always misses it by one show. He's been doing an absurd amount of shows to not get a song like Thatch, and it is his favorite. So he finally got it at this show. Here's the floor, Mike. Geek out about you getting your first Thatch. Walk us through exactly what you were doing, what blade of grass you were on. Like, give us the whole scoop.
well, just like one sentence more of further context. I have this thing with all of my favorite bands that if I start to fall in love with a band, whatever my favorite song ends up being, I'm not going to get it for quite a while. That's just how it goes for me. Uh, Especially, it usually ends up being something that's fairly common or at least not that hard to get. So this hasn't really been that shocking to me. But yeah, no, I was dead center, front of the lawn against the rail, and Rick was up a little bit higher on the neck than the spot that I would expect him to do the pick slide for Thatch, because he's normally sliding from 15 down, and he was like around the 7th fret, just kind of like noodling around, and so I was like not getting my hopes too much up. But then he played a couple licks, and the notes sounded like they were in the same key, just a little bit lower down, and then I kind of crouched to the lawn, and then I heard the pick slide start, and then I jumped what I'm sure had to have been 75 feet in the air or so, screaming, yeah. And that's how set 2 started for me. Someone can fact check me. It may not have actually been 75 feet in the air, but it certainly felt like it.
In this age of misinformation everywhere, like if you just say it enough times, it's true. So
Yeah,
75 feet it is.
it's a Guinness Book World Record, and Goose caused it. So,
Yeah.
but I couldn't be more pleased because not only did I finally get to hear it, I got it as a set 2 opener, so I knew I was going to get a jam, and they really did it justice for me. I got a really good version, so I don't know if it's going to pass Ben Thatch, which I think is kind of the bar that's been set, but this one is really really good. It starts off in that familiar atmospheric space that gradually builds into a rocking peak, led by just insane playing from Trevor and Rick, and their ability to follow each other with these intricate runs is really something to watch, and something that you often don't see from a guitar player and a bassist. They descend into some discordant, scary tension builds a la February, and they stretch that into a few massive peaks before coming down into the song proper. And me and the audience, I mean, I think it was like 90% hands up in the air coming out of the dark, scary Goose into the Thatch riff.
Oh, it was a really good version. So don't discount it with the Ben Thatch. That is like the gold standard. Like that's like a
Yeah.
once every year or two you're gonna get a Thatch there.
Yeah.
So this one was really really good, and I'm so glad this was what you got versus like an 8-minute encore or something like you said.
Yeah.
I won't say too much more. I just once again wanted to shout out to what you said earlier. Trevor was just stupendous. Especially I noticed it on that funk ramp into the jam. He was just up front and center, and you knew it was going to be a Trevor heavy jam here. And there was a point during that middle of the jam ripping rock section where all four of the guys had a stank face on or their mouths open in like jam face mode. And I was like, this is just tremendous. Like, you usually see it with like just Peter for a second or just Cotter for a second. They were all doing it at the same time when they were cutting the cameras. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a bop. And then, yeah, that dark section, nice and quiet and spooky, like walking down a hallway in a haunted house or something like that. And then just ratcheted up the intensity quickly, like you said, to a glorious, glorious peak. I don't know how you could have your hands down by your sides when something like that's happening in a 30-mile vicinity.
Yeah, it was really special. And I think I should have listened to you a while ago. You told me a long time ago that I missed some not as great Thatches and I was going to get a good one. And you were absolutely right. So I
Hey,
should have listened to your wisdom all along.
let me be clear. They're all great. I just
Yeah.
wanted you to get one that was like had some runtime to it like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad I did because I definitely wasn't expecting the dark sections. That was a nice added bonus. And then they really, really did their thing with this second set, because I really want to get your thoughts on this Creatures and the daily dose required of Goonts in all of our lives, prescribed by all of our family doctors. I think this is my favorite Goont so far, but I want to hear what you think.
Really? I mean, I buy it. My main note, I actually had short notes, but it's not a bad thing. I thought this was absolutely sick, and I think this is quickly becoming my favorite medium to inject some goons into my veins here. But this one
Yeah.
felt different than the other ones to me. Listening back, it felt more like a joyful rave than like Blade tearing up vampires in the nightclub rave, but still ripping, if that makes any sense. It was just really, really fun, and it felt happier. Not as like dark and brooding and gritty, but also banging.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think one of the things that can sometimes be challenging with Goons is, I mean, I know it's relatively a new thing, so it's like it's almost hard to critique it anyways because they haven't even really necessarily figured out all that's possible with it or where it's going to end up. But I think one of the things that is sometimes challenging with some of the Goons jams is that sometimes the other members of the band can get a little bit lost in the sauce. It can come a little bit of a mess of loops and cotter, and you're not necessarily hearing the glory that Rick's doing on in the background or whatever Trevor's doing. But I thought what was so great about this was that the sequencers were definitely fully engaged, but we had two guitar goose, Trevor absolutely on one, loud and proud. I could hear everything he was doing. Rick was doing incredibly complex stuff, but it was all audible. It just felt like a really good, clean mix of chaos, but it was all chaos that you could pick out and identify, and it was all working towards a common thing, which that common thing was a ridiculous dance party. But that's why I just felt like it was so freaking cohesive that this is my favorite Goons so far, and I'll definitely co-sign what you said about Creatures being the best Goons vehicle, because I think if I think back about all the best versions of Goons that we've heard, it's most all of them have come from Creatures.
It's that and Tumble, I would say, and
Yeah.
Empress. There's been a lot of
I
good
think
goons.
Creatures probably has the most versions, though.
Yeah, it's up there. It's between that and
Yeah.
Tumble for sure. I can't. It feels like we've had a million now. It's hard to say.
Yeah. It's every day.
It's great. Not to discount what you're saying, but it's just like,
Yeah.
man, it's so much goons. It's like there's a lot of good avenues for it, but this feels like
Yeah.
my favorite avenue for it now.
Yeah, especially because you can also still get one of those classic Creatures every now and then. So it keeps you honest where like we just had a kind of, I don't know, quote unquote regular Creatures a few weeks ago. And that was like everyone kind of collectively lost their minds, and rightfully so, because you don't necessarily know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Creatures is the shit. I've been on a Creatures kick lately. It's just an awesome tune, and any version of it you can get is terrific. But I love it, the goons.
Well, and this was also cool and notable for the end because they were kind of telegraphing the move to Hollywood Nights from a long way out. So, I mean, you could kind of just gradually feel the chords coming in underneath for probably 2 or 3 minutes, by at least how it felt in my head. And it just kind of gradually built, but it made it a really cool and unique Hollywood Nights because of that build, because you could see people kind of like whispering to each other, and like some guys were like starting to crouch down and bounce a little bit harder. And it was just like, it was a wave of anticipation because everybody was getting ready for Hollywood Nights. And I thought that this truly brought the venue to a fever pitch. I saw dance moves I didn't even know existed. And it was, especially after they came back from the solo for the last chorus, I mean, 100% hands in the air, lights shining on the audience, everybody just pure joy, so much fun.
Yeah, did you hear the news that Charlotte had to enact a new law that it's illegal to not be dancing, smiling, or singing along during this performance at any given time when Goose plays Hollywood Nights? It was terrific. This song always,
we're all in compliance.
Yeah, it's just outstanding set placement, and to have a high energy cover like this after a pretty high energy Creatures was a great call. Like I think it just was riding the wave, and it was terrific.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily what I was expecting either, because out of that Goons, I've, everything's running through your brain, so you're thinking about anything that could be like a little bit more electronic. You're like, well, they just played You Spin Me Round, like, so you're racking your brain trying to figure out. Hollywood Nights was not what I was expecting coming, but as soon as they started making that shift, it was just like, this is a completely different way to keep the energy up in a different genre of music, and it just worked so well.
It's such a good cover. Like, I wish it was played more than once a tour, honestly, because it's just the best.
Yeah, and I'll apologize to Darren, our friend of the pod, because I know he was chasing it, and I didn't necessarily even need this on my bingo card because I've seen it before. So I'm really sorry for him. I know he has a show on deck, and Goose, if you're listening, if you can find it in your hearts to play Hollywood Nights again in Philly, that would be lovely.
He's been chasing that. Yeah, in our group text, he was like, I hope they play Hollywood Nights in Philly, like just before the end of Creatures, and then
It
somehow
had
he
to have been
himself.
7 minutes before it started, and I just felt like the worst person on earth. Like, I didn't ask for this at all, but my God, I feel so bad for him. But that's jam
Anyway,
band life.
no one wants to hear about our critics. Just a funny note. Sorry, Darren.
But then next, this was really cool as well. So they do So Ready, but they bring back out Penelope Road. And I just thought this was really cool because obviously, way back in the day, Goose had a lot of help from people like, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. They were the opener for a lot of different bands and got to do a lot of cool different guest spots. And now they're kind of at the point where they can pay it forward to other bands that they think are interesting and upcoming. And Penelope Road has also been covering So Ready themselves for many years. So they're very familiar with the song. My girlfriend is friends with the drummer of Penelope Road, so it was really cool for all of us to see Goose kind of pay it forward to an up and coming band and bring them on. And just another quick note, I thought this So Ready sounded really good just from the fullness of having extra musicians and extra vocals on stage. It just gave So Ready can be one of those ones that's a little bit stagnant in a live setting, but with the additions of the guest spot, I thought this sounded really excellent.
Yeah, you said it really well there. I won't add too much more, but Max Moore on guitar and vocals, Charles Eastman on keys and vocals. They knew the song and they knew Satellite too, and they just killed it. And it did sound very full, and that they knew what they were doing, and they did a great job with it. It was a really fun way to close the set and good way to pay it forward, like you said.
Yeah. And like I said, their opening sets were great. Their originals were really good. They did a great cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. So I'm definitely going to be checking them out here going forward. And then Give It Time. It's kind of hard to end on higher vibes than that. The whole crowd, I want to say, was more singing for this than anything else. And I know that's true for a lot of venues, but I definitely talked to a lot of people before the show that were at their very first show ever for Goose. And it was clear that this was one of the ones that everyone was familiar with. And a lot of people were very thrilled to get their favorite Goose song at their first show. So that was kind of cool to watch as well.
Yeah, I think that's the one from new fans we get the message the most about it being their favorite song. So really cool. Great sing-along tune. Everyone seems to know it these days, and great way to close a set. Just stadium Goose vibes.
100%. So that's about all I had for my run. Any other overall thoughts on this crazy week of music that you and I were blessed to partake in? Because I'm really happy just for both of us. We got 4 great shows that were great for completely different reasons and similar reasons as well. But you and I just had a really blessed and full week of music, and we're very lucky.
It was terrific, and anyone who got to go to this full 4-show run is super lucky, and it's a hell of a place that Goose is in on this fall tour right now. It's can't miss television. It's can't miss shows. It's if you can't go to the show, be sure to catch it on Nugs. If you can go to the show, something's local, you're in Columbus or Richmond or Philly, get a ticket if you don't have one already, because this is some of the best improv and set listing you'll see Goose do.
Yep, they're clicking on all cylinders. Everything they're doing right now is getting an A+ grade from me, and I cannot wait to recap next week's shows. We'll be back next weekend to recap these last 4 here, and you will be at Philly. So if anyone is going to the Man, please look up Alex. I'm sure he's going to have stickers on deck to hand out, and yeah, very excited for this run for you, buddy. More to come.
I'm going to try to hand out some stickers. I'll have my bright orange hat on if anyone sees one. Try to find me for some stickers. My wife and I are doing our first TED pit experience, so we're going to be going earlier than we usually do and hopefully get in a pretty good spot. But we'll try to hand out stickers wherever we are, and we'll be on the lots early. So if you're there, would love to give you some Prison Rick and Mario Kart Peter. And yeah, we have a lot of funny ones.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stickers right now. So, well, thank y'all so much for listening this long. This was a long one, but it was really 4 great shows, so we had to talk about them and do them justice here. And we will be back next week with another episode to recap this last week of tour. So thank y'all so much and hope you have a great week.
Take care.